Alright, so let's take a look now. How many of you figured out pretty quickly what you had?
Well, I knew I was something royal.
What'd you have?
I knew I was something royal.
Oh, something royal. What's that, royal pain? Alright, there. Okay, no, yeah, you were. Very good. Who else found out right away? What'd you have?
I had a 3.
You had a 3? I'm so sorry. Did it hurt? Did it hurt to have a 3? Yes.
I had a 6, but it felt like I had a 2.
Oh, that's so sad. Okay, somebody come give him a hug. This is sad. Anybody have a joker? Okay, yeah. Did you figure that out, Beth? Okay, they were just cracking me up because some of you were laughing so hard. Who had an ace? Anybody? Okay, how was it? Was it good? Kind of. So that's the problem, right? So we have aces. How do you figure out what they are? Are they a high card? Are they a low card? What are they? It depends. It really depends. And then also jokers. I've actually had people who snub jokers. That's kind of sad too, in my opinion. But so it just depends on whatever the person gives that value to. And we're going to come back to the face value because sometimes I wish that we could actually pin our card to whoever, so that people would just know who we were. But we just give that face value. We take a look at a person and we assign a face value and we end up treating them that way. And it's unfortunate, but that's just how it goes. And also, if you take a look, your communication also can vary from person to person, depending on what kind of value you assign to them. Now, for those of you who came to the unconscious bias class yesterday, we talked about that quite a bit, because sometimes we're not even aware that we're doing that. It just kind of happens. Somebody has, a couple degrees behind their name, several initials, which are, a little bit like royalty sometimes. And it just depends on how much you value higher ed and how much you don't. I had an opportunity to actually interview for faculty positions. I was helping to do the hiring and the interviewing. And I realized very quickly that some people with higher degrees don't have a lick of common sense. And I treated them like royalty, and they kind of became like an ace to me. I was like, wow, high card, maybe low card, I don't know. And I'm not saying that about every single person, but it was actually kind of an eye-opening experience for me, because they ran the gamut of where they fell in their interviewing skills. And so it just showed me really quickly that I was very biased towards people with higher education, biased towards the positive, and the interviewing process over 6 months kind of changed my opinion towards that, and not for the favorable. So I don't know if that's like a happy diversity story or a sad one, I don't know. But the card game actually has several different purposes. One is to talk about that face value, and then the second is to talk about invisible and visible diversity. Those are the two types of diversity that exist. Of course, visible is readily observable. Gender, race, physical disability, you can see those things. Or can you? Sometimes you can and sometimes you cannot. Then invisible diversity is everything else that can fall into it. So take a look, and I'm so glad there's all kinds of screens around the room. Take a look at this picture. This is not something I made up. I wish I did. It's just called diversity iceberg. So you take a look, and what do you see? What's an observation that you can make about that?
All the outward visible.
A lot more under the waterline, isn't there? Let's talk about, because up on top, there's only really the fully on top are skin color, race, gender, and age. Let's talk about the waterline. And let me read those to you. Nationality, physical ability, ethnicity, wealth, social status, culture, and religion. What do you think about those things? What stands out to you about this whole iceberg? Is there anything? Nationality. All right, let's talk about that. So, why is nationality on the waterline? Like me. Sometimes you can tell, and sometimes you can't. It's not like I can, pin that to my, well, but, when you have applications, you can say, but not really, because, again, even in interviews, I've had people say, you're Asian? Like, why are you Asian? How does that work? That's totally illegal. Don't do that. But because I do HR, we can kind of get away with it. I'm like, oh, well, that's because, Pakistan's in Asia, and so that's Asian. It's classified as Asian. They're like, huh, weird. Do you feel like Chinese? It's like, okay, yeah, again, don't say that out loud because I'll get you a lawsuit. But, all right, well, I'm just going to roll with it because I really like the job. Anyway, and I didn't get the job after that. So there you figure. It doesn't work out anyway. You're just learning all kinds of things that I didn't really want to talk about today. But it's just this group letting me open. So what else do you see about the iceberg?
Well, how about location division? That's like really foreign to me.
Okay, location and division, that's like way down there. So what do you think of that? It might be the division that you work for. It might be like the place that they've assigned you to. So if you're in Podunk, Oklahoma, that they look down at you, and if you're in the city that you have a little bit more card value, oh, you're over there. Oh, okay.
So where you are.
Yes, the division that you work for, the location that you office out of, even. So, and I know I even get those responses like, oh, you're from Edmond. Oh, okay, good for you. You must have made it. No, just kidding. So sometimes it's just where you're located and what you do. All right, let's take a look again at the waterline. So you have nationality, physical ability, because that's not very easily, a lot of people can actually hide that very well. Dyslexia, totally hide that. And so a lot of times we have people that maybe look like they have it together and they're suffering from something. A friend of mine has Crohn's disease. She will not tell people about it. She does not talk about it. You wouldn't ever know that she has that, and she really suffers. And with all these catered lunches and all this stuff, she has to work around that. But I'm like, come on, just say it. Maybe they can make an accommodation for you. She's adamant. She did not want anybody to know about it. I don't know. She's not ready to disclose that yet. What about we talked about ethnicity. What about wealth? Isn't that interesting? So give me some opinions on wealth. Why is that on the waterline? What you wear. What else? What you drive. Heard that.
You live in Edmond?
Ouch! Man, that hurt. I didn't know I had a 2 or a 3 card. Yeah, that's right. If you live in Edmond, that could be. Oh, you live in Edmond too? Sweet. Look at you. Good for you. Yes.
I have a really good story about wealth. There was a gentleman who, I don't think he lived in our neighborhood, but he lived by, and he walked every day on the street. And he was legitimately scary, gaunt, and he had kind of long straggly hair, and he sort of shuffled down the street, and everyone in the neighborhood knew about him, and we were all like, where does he go? Where does he belong? Who is this guy? And I just started waving to him because I just was like, I'm just gonna wave, and stopped seeing him for a long time, and then found out that he was a veteran. He was a single man. He didn't have any family. He gave Habitat for Humanity $2 million upon his death. And it's we thought he was, people were frightened of him. We didn't know. And he wore the same outfit every day. It was the craziest thing because we were like,
Yeah.
this was this guy was way better than all of us.
Yeah, so it's an investment. It's actually a way to collect information. I know all of you like that. It is information about your target audience. It's a way to tap into what is a market that we're missing. Where are we having a blind spot? Are we totally ignoring one aspect of our organization and even our customer base? So it allows you to take a look at information in a really different way. And diversity actually increases innovation, and it also differentiates you from your competitors. if you have larger diversity, studies have shown that you have larger profits. It's directly tied into the bottom line. It's not just a touchy-feely. I know I do HR, that's touchy-feely. But HR also does return on investment. Diversity has been proven to have a return on investment. I'll share those with you as we go along. Okay, icons with different skin colors. Love them. So I'm so excited about that. And today, I mean, that's like what's getting us all excited about it. I know that's really sad. But diversity actually has all kinds of aspects that you're not really supposed to talk about and are considered taboo. So I just consider myself super privileged that I'm able to talk about everything that you're not supposed to talk about, which is race, ethnicity, gender, age, religion, sexual orientation, socioeconomic backgrounds. Diversity covers all of those things, and that's what makes people go, we're not supposed to talk about that because we want to be politically correct. Well, yes and no. Yes, you should be talking about it. Yes, you should be addressing it in a productive manner. No, you shouldn't just be ignoring it, because every single one of these things plays an aspect in your work. So let's talk about religion first off. As I mentioned, I actually grew up in the Middle East. I used to be a Muslim. I was a Muslim for 35 years until 11 years ago I accepted Jesus as my Lord and Savior. I became a Christian. I actually experienced diversity, prejudice, discrimination from both sides. Hey, lucky me. In fact, I was telling someone yesterday, I was a Muslim when it wasn't popular during 9/11, because I was speaking about Islam during that time. And, now I'm a Christian. That's not popular either. So I find myself kind of on the wrong side of the fence each time, but I'm actually quite loving it. So let's talk about religion here. And by the way, if you want to know about either one of those things, come talk to me afterwards, because as you can tell, I'm not really that shy about talking about any of those things. So did you know that more than half of workers feel that Muslims experience discrimination? That's just any workers that feel this. 50% of non-Christians say employers ignore their religious needs. 48% of white evangelical Christians report experiencing or witnessing religious bias, not just for themselves, but they witness it for others as well. Nearly 6 in 10 atheists agree that people look down on their beliefs. Religion kind of is an issue. It can be an issue in the workplace as well. It's hard to ignore some of these things. It's about time that we start talking about it in an open and adult way. Let's be adults about it. Let's talk about age. Did you know that 85 years and older is the fastest growing category in the United States? About 16% of our population is 60 or more. And the numbers are actually staggering. By 2050, that's going to increase to 22%. And our median age keeps going up. So in the 80s, it was about 26, and now it's 35. So we're having an aging population. And that's also, it includes immigrants and everybody else. So it's not just we're aging quickly, but we kind of are as a nation. By 2020, we're going to have, for the first time ever in the history of the United States, 5 generations working together. This means a lot more money for me, because I get a chance to talk about diversity and how we can get along just in the age category. Because right now, that's what a lot of the Fortune 500s are asking me to talk about. Is, Mona, what do we do with these millennials, and how do we get along? And then the millennials are hiring me saying, I cannot work for my parents. Help me before I go crazy. And so you're having 5 generations in the workplace right now. That is awesome. That is very, very cool in terms of age diversity. There is a new metaphor, because before we used to talk about the United States as the melting pot. Then they came up with vegetable soup. Have you heard about that? Like, you can still, we're all kind of in it together, kind of like a big hot tub sauna of vegetables. And then, it's weird, I know. And then salad, like, okay, we're out of the hot tub now, we're gonna go with the cold entree, where everybody still looks, different, but we all get along. But now, people are saying, those are not working. No, because you can still, that doesn't make any sense. So the new trend in diversity is diversity of thought. Have you heard of that before? All right, so that's the thing. That's the benefit of the inclusive workplace. Let's bring diversity of thought, because you don't have to be a particular food group. You can actually be diverse in the way that is just your family background. It could be your education. It could be anything. But we're going to bring diversity of thought. And what does that mean? That means cognitive diversity. Diversity in the way we think, in the way we process, in the way we don't process, in the way we drive other people insane. It could also be perspectives, like, all right, I'm going to respect where you're coming from, even though I don't agree with it. Wonderful way to promote diversity of thought. And also, believe it or not, there are measurable demographic indicators for diversity of thought. So we talk about innate and acquired and unique, making up a unique toolbox of different perspectives. And I'm going to tell you, companies like Apple and like Coca-Cola, some of these companies are really tapping into this to say, let's take a look and see if we can create a different product. I don't know if you saw like Lay's potato chips with all the different kinds that they came up with. That's a part of diversity of thought. It's exciting. It's really kind of cool. And so, yes, they have a spicy Indian curry potato chip. So I haven't tried it yet. I can't even find it, but I saw it. And I know it exists somewhere out there. I gotta go get it. So what does all of that mean for us sitting here? Well, it is an indicative of the changing face of America. Let me share these stats about race with you. So there are U.S. born, quote unquote, people of color. So that means the different races. But also, we are having a huge amount of immigrant influx. And that is actually making up 45% of the workers as of last year. So we're tipping scales here. So the workforce looks a lot different than the US population. So you're seeing increased diversity in terms of race in the workplace. Now, I have some bad news. The white male, Caucasian male population continues to decline. And that's not just because of intermarriage. That's because you're having a lot of the silent generation and boomers also passing away. And this is not something I'm making up. This is actually a fact, and you can, if you're interested in that, I can give you the link to that. And then as of 2015, which is old news, Hispanics are the largest minority. In fact, they make up over 25% of Texas. Huge, almost like a majority population. In the old days, back in the day, I actually used to talk about gender in terms of men and women, but with sexual orientation, that talk's changed a little bit because diversity and the topic of diversity is changing. So if you Google genderbread person, that's something that's being taught in the public schools now. In terms of new legislation, there is what's coming down the pipes called non-binary designation. Have you heard of that? Anybody in here? Okay, I'm seeing some heads shaking, yes. So non-binary designation means no more using male and female pronouns. So no more he and no more she. And so that, I'm going to just tell you, brings up a whole host of HR implications, and also, for all of you, public relations implications. So if you have somebody who does not want to be referred by a particular gender, you're going to need to be even more careful in the way that you are doing reporting and you're bringing out the information to the public. But I do, especially me being a woman who loves to mentor other women succeed, and I have a heart for women, I want to focus a little bit more on the women. And there's a quote here by Jackie Vanderberg, who's a director for a U.S. trust. She says, there's a growing body of research that shows that female leadership and gender diversity help the bottom line. Women, especially in the executive realms, it's still a very thin little sliver, but those are changing because it's just hitting a lot more of the public sector. And also, I believe mentoring is key to that. So if you're a woman sitting here and you are not being mentored, go look for a mentor. And if you are a woman who is not mentoring somebody, shame on you. So men, I'm excusing all of you because it shows 67% of men actually, they don't care about who they mentor, men or women. But women, guess what's the percentage of women who mentor women? Just take a wild guess. 12%. 67% of men, 12% of women. We're not that good at mentoring other women. And there's a lot of different studies on why that is, but my whole thing is step up and start doing that. Because if you want to change some of the statistics, that's the only way you're going to be able to do it, is by helping other women succeed. So, all right, I'm going to get off my soapbox for that. All right, let's switch some gear and talk about those cultural hot buttons. So I'm not going to read all these to you, but take a look at this list up here and tell me what stands out to you. Is there one that you have a question on? That's a huge list. And all of these things make up parameters of culture. Go ahead. Guys are so quiet.
What about space?
Space, wonderful. All right, so let's take a look at space. That's actually one of my favorites. I didn't even ask her to do that, but I'm so glad you said space. Space is cultural. Did you know that? Okay, so what do you think is personal space in Oklahoma? You got it. It's big. Why is it big? We have space. We live in wide open, what is it, Oklahoma, wind goes sweeping down the plains, right? You got big, huge open space. It's about, I don't know, I'm not that tall, so it's about like 6 feet, like we just don't want people all up in our business. And so Oklahoma, you've got a lot of space. In New York, that cultural space narrows down to about 12 inches. Did you know that? Anybody from the East Coast? Okay, would you agree with that? Yeah. Subways, yeah, I'm glad to hear that. She clarified that we hug, but not at work. That's still sad to me, but that's okay. So yeah, 12 inches. In Japan, what do you think it is? Less than 3 inches. Dang! Like, even my kids, I'm like, you're creeping me out. Like, get away, get 3 inches. I'm a loving mom. Seriously, like, okay, that's enough. That's enough of that. Because now I'm an Okie, and I want 6 feet from you. I don't say that tonight. I was telling people yesterday, we don't save up for our kids' college. We save up for therapy because we're gonna need it. I don't care if they go to college. I just want them to make sure they get psychiatric help. So yeah, space is totally irrelevant, and it is a cultural implication. What else?
What about aesthetics?
Aesthetics. Oh man, so glad that table just on fire. Okay, aesthetics is beauty. So what's beautiful in this culture? What do you think? I know. Okay, blonde. What else? Yeah. Okay, light skin, but also when I got here, people were like, "Oh, wow, do you tan?" I was like, "No." I mean, not really. They're like, "Wow, you've got dark skin." We've had, in fact, we were talking about this morning. People have actually asked Stephen and I, "Okay, what color skin do your kids have?" I'm like, "Human skin color." I don't know. I never really thought about it. Like, one's dark, one's light, one's, I don't know. They're half packs. What am I supposed to do? You know? That's not politically correct. But we say it. They are. In fact, 2 of our boys used to work at a restaurant together. When they'd show up, they'd be like, "Hey, we got a full pack." It's true. And so, aesthetics is beauty. They know about this. Again, going to the psychiatric fund. It's going to be okay. So what is beautiful in one culture may not be beautiful in another. I have a nose piercing. People in the beginning, they're like, "You do corporate training, you can't have a nose piercing in Oklahoma." I'm like, okay, it's part of the culture. My mom had a nose piercing. My grandma had a nose piercing. In fact, people were like, "What's your mom going to say?" And I was like, "I don't know, let's watch." And I was like, "Mom, I got a nose piercing." She's like, "Oh, thank God, I have somebody to give my mom's jewels. Your daughter's going to want a nose piercing. She's 11. And I was like,
Okay.
right. And your point is? And they're like, "Well, are you going to let her have one at 11? I said, "My mom was trying to get me one at 8. Yeah, she can have one. She's too old now. She can have one. So aesthetics is totally different too, because it depends on what one culture thinks is beautiful may not be beauty to another culture. In fact, I'm just going to tell you this too. I probably shouldn't, but I'm just going to say it. In Pakistan, my parents would not let me outside. Like, I'm an indoor girl. Like, even now, poor Steve, he wants me to go out, and I'm like, yeah, you know, I'd rather stay indoors. And then I found out I have vitamin D deficiency. He's like, 'cause you don't go out. I was like, yeah, because in Pakistan and in the Middle East, they don't want girls to go out. Why? Because they don't want you to get darker. Because lighter skin is beautiful. It's just how it is. That's how I was raised. And then you move to the U.S. and everybody's getting a tan. I'm like, okay, I don't even get it. So that's just how it is. That's culture, though. And that's understanding or lack of understanding, and however it is. It's just one culture views something differently and the other one says the opposite. It's a mixed up world. That's why diversity sometimes doesn't make any sense, because you don't know which camp people are coming from. You have no idea. So how do you figure all of this stuff out? Well, there's a thing called cultural intelligence. In fact, I teach on it. Cultural intelligence actually can be measured. So it's called CQ. It's like IQ is your intelligence quotient. It determines how smart you are. EQ is emotional quotient, which was developed by Daniel Goleman in the 70s. And it tells you how mature you are and how well you can work with people. Well, the new determining factor, especially for hiring for large companies like L'Oreal and Lancome, and also a lot of the larger sales corporations, they are now taking a look at your CQ, which is your cultural intelligence. They're saying, we know that you can know yourself, we know that you can work well with others, but how well can you work with groups that are of different backgrounds, including age? So that's what people are now starting to hire for, and yeah, you can measure it. So did you know diverse organizations outperform non-diverse by 90%? These are Forbes.com statistics. 90%. In fact, most have shown that productivity can increase by 15 times, not 15%, but 15 times. And that's because of being driven by innovation and the diversity of thought. When you have different opinions on stuff and you get challenged, it can actually, your organization, if it's adaptable to change, and that's what this whole conference is about being on target in a changing environment. If your organization can be adaptable to change, you can actually outperform 15 times your competition. 90% of executives from 68 different countries said cultural diversity is their #1 challenge. So cultural diversity isn't just a little thing, it's actually a big deal. Now, all this is being said about diversity, and a lot of corporations are signing on, but guess what? Forbes.com also reported as of last year, only 3.2% of Fortune 500s disclose all their data on diversity. They're still picking and choosing what they want to reveal and what they don't want to reveal. So what that means to me is that, not that they're hiding things, which they are, but it also shows that we're just not quite there in terms of diversity, because organizations are doing some things really well and they're disclosing that data, but then they're hiding or not disclosing the rest of it. And I think once we start getting over that hump, we're going to actually start seeing a lot more change in diversity. All right, getting closer to wrapping this up. I just want to talk about assumptions, because that's what the card game was about as well. Sometimes we see somebody at their face value, and like you had mentioned about the man who was in your neighborhood, even informed assumptions can be wrong. In other words, what you see is not always what you get. I know, shocking. We also need to start listening better to what other people are saying, and also their verbal cues and their nonverbal cues. So start reading and listening for their body language and what they're saying to you without using words. And then diversity, you can break the ice. You invite, collaborate, and engage with others who don't look like you. So when's the last time you invited somebody from a different department to go and have a cup of coffee with you? When's the last time you invited one of your neighbors to do that from home? We spend some time in our organizations and we forget about the other people around in our lives. And so I really encourage you, after today, just think about those who have been kind of in your life that you may have ignored or just kind of put off to the side. And you never know, you could be living next to that $2 million neighbor. But don't let that be like your motivation, like, hey, how much money you got saved? Don't go there. That might not be a good diversity icebreaker. But this is a Nike ad, and I really love it. It says, everything starts in your head. Stop making excuses and just do it. It is. Creative tension is actually good tension. We want to strive to make creative tension in our organizations. I challenge you to go do that. If you see something that maybe is status quo, ask why. I know you irritate some people, but I'm one of those, why? Well, I do. Why? And then I get all mad at my kids when they do it. But I like to do it in organizations. And then the other thing, like I said, invite someone and talk to someone who doesn't look like you. Give a part of yourself and mentor, especially you, women, and expand your cultural intelligence. And by the way, you can do that really easily by just going out and trying some new food. I know everybody likes food. That's a great way to experience cultural diversity and increase your knowledge. Effective action can only happen through leadership and communication. So to bring this to a close, I just want to show you a video, and I've got 2 more slides after that. But this is the Dove Beauty campaign, and it brings me back to the aesthetics, because the way that we see beauty, it really varies from person to person. In fact, we kind of almost have to start with ourselves, because sometimes we don't see what other people see. And so this is inviting somebody for a seat at the table, especially when the table is full, might actually involve you getting up and giving up your seat. And so that is actually what diversity can make somebody do. And I think sometimes people are a little bit scared of that. Like, man, I worked so hard to get this seat at this table. Now I don't really want to get up for somebody else who might have an opportunity. But I wanted to show that video because with you getting up and actually offering up your seat, or even inviting somebody to an open seat, it might actually change the dynamics that occur in your organization. You never know what other people are seeing. And it's about your actions. It's not about your intentions. You can talk about diversity all day long, but it's until they see you get up and offer that up to somebody else and see the beauty in somebody else. That's really when diversity can become empowering. And that's when diversity changes into inclusion, is when you ask somebody to come in and actually experience your life with you. And that's a really, really tough challenge. And I just want to remind you that it's really not all about you or me. It's actually about we. And that's the hallmark, and that's the heart of diversity, is the inclusion piece of it. So in closing, diversity is only fair. We want to encourage positive communication and give people feedback, especially if they may be misinformed about something, to help them to educate and work positively together. A is to assist others become more culturally competent. So if you have some feedback or you have some ideas on how to improve diversity in your organization, you should share those. And again, maybe your culture is not ready for that quite yet, so you might want to fill that out. But I think once you start doing that in even your own department, in your own area, in your own neighborhood, you're going to start seeing changes. I is for inclusion. Inclusion should be practiced. That's what brings those seats at the table. And the R is respect, which is absolutely, positively non-negotiable. So with that, I just want to, again, invite you to connect with me. Find me on LinkedIn. You can check out the blog where I write about diversity, especially I just finished writing a series on Ramadan and how to help people who are fasting and to be a little bit more sensitive to their needs. And then also I wrote 2 books. One is just my testimony of growing up in the East and coming to the West and being a Muslim and then becoming a Christian. And then I just published a book that came out last week, and it's about reaching Muslims. And again, it's about connecting and understanding the culture. So I write a lot of things. My parents are so mad at me, by the way. I write about things that are actually quite personal because I want people to be able to understand what it is, some assumptions that people from the East make about the West, and also the other way around, some of the things that the Westerners do that the Easterners don't understand. So if you're interested in any of those, let me know. And with that, again, thank you so much for your attention this morning and for playing along. Hope you have a great night.
Thank you, Mona. That was such a powerful way to end our conference. We really enjoyed that presentation.